Hi guys, and we are checking out some Zack D films, and the first video that we're reacting to is retracting your head like a turtle. Okay?
His head would retract like a turtle, dodging the incoming punch. Now, for that to work, your neck would fold into a tight curve, using new joints that let your spine bend without breaking. At the same time, strong muscles would pull your skull straight down like cables, and your shoulders would shift forward, making space for your head to slide in. Now, your chest would have to somehow open up inside, so your skull has somewhere to go, at which point you could duck your head super fast and avoid getting hit. His head would retract like a... The blade is wrapped tightly with fabric and soaked in fuel. Next, it's put into a metal sheath with a flint. And as the blade is drawn out, the flint is struck by hand, producing sparks that light the fuel instantly. Now, the fabric doesn't burn away, only the fuel does. So as the sword swings through the air, the fuel whips around with it, leaving streaks of flame behind. To put it out, the burning blade is slid back into the sheath, cutting off oxygen until the fire dies. When they removed the feeding tube from the mosquito, it was hollow and straight, but it was too fragile to use directly. So they coated it with resin to make it stronger and attached it to a needle tip. Then they built a 3D printer around it, and as ink flowed through the tube, it printed lines finer than a grain of sand, letting them build tiny structures most printers could never make, all thanks to a mosquito. When they drop down onto your hands and feet before leaning forward and running like an animal. Since you have 4 points hitting the ground instead of just 2, there are more chances to push off and build speed. Because running fast,
especially when you're running, you have to put a lot of force into it to run faster than an animal.
Isn't just about moving your legs quickly, it's about how hard you push while touching the ground. So if you time it just right, your arms and legs could add more force with every step, allowing you to run faster. Drop down onto your hands and feet. If you stick a metal rod into the ground and run electricity through it, the current would move through the wet soil before zapping a worm. And this forces them to escape by wriggling to the surface. Now, if you had 500 trillion of these devices, you could cover the surface of the Earth. And with 130 million nuclear power plants, you could send enough electricity into the ground to pull up every single earthworm, covering the world in a layer of wriggling pink worms. Thin holes are drilled into the gold bar before tungsten rods are pushed inside. And after the surface is patched back up, it looks and weighs just like any other gold bar. You see, tungsten weighs almost the exact same as gold, so counterfeiters use these to trick customers. But if the bar is passed through an ultrasound check, the waves hit the tungsten differently, revealing the scam. When you spray a German cockroach with poison, a special enzyme inside its body breaks down the chemicals before they can damage the roach's nerves, meaning the poison doesn't work. And if that roach lays eggs, many of their babies will inherit the same protection. Within months, those babies will have more babies, and eventually, most of the colony is safe from the poison. Now, a whole new group can survive the same poison and even stronger chemicals until you're left with roaches that nothing can kill except a stomp. When you spray a German cockroach with poison, a special enzyme inside its body breaks down the chemicals before they can damage the roach's nerves. Meaning, if you plucked one single hair off Robert's head, he would look exactly the same. Now imagine you pluck another and another, and soon you've taken dozens, maybe even 100. But Robert still looks normal. Now, his hair might be slightly thinner, but no one would say he's bald. So you keep going. Hundreds turn into thousands. Now Robert's scalp is starting to peek through. People might say he's thinning, but he still wouldn't quite be bald. So what if you keep plucking until only 1,000 hairs remain? Well, at some point, he He would slide the arrow into the tube, then hide it in his sleeve. Inside the tube sat a compressed spring, held back by a small trigger. And when he flicked his wrist and pressed the trigger, the spring snapped forward, and the arrow shot straight out of his sleeve. Now, some versions had 2 barrels to fire twice in a row, and others even had multiple tubes to launch several at once, allowing you to shoot from close range while the weapon stays hidden. He would slide the... They kidnapped the musician, according to the story. And when they arrived, he realized he was at the headquarters of a mafia boss who happened to love his music. So he was forced to play piano for the mobster's birthday. But according to him, he was showered with money and poured glass after glass of expensive champagne. After 3 days of performing, he was let go with his pockets stuffed full of cash and a great story.
Okay, that was enough Zack D films because that got too crazy. See you in part 2. Bye.